Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany, and thank you for listening. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas. I am so excited that you have been a part of my community this year and you are listening right now. This is a republishing of one of my favorite episodes from this year. I decided to take the last couple of weeks of December off and give my team the time off as well, which is much needed. And so I am publishing some of my favorite episodes and some of the most downloaded ones that have thousands of downloads so that anyone who missed them can listen. You know, I have a bunch of new people around here. And so I just want to share some of my favorite moments from this year, some episodes that kind of really stood out to me. So that's what this episode is. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get something from it. Happy holidays. I really hope everyone is spending this time with family or friends or any loved ones that you might have. I hope you're finding balance and health, even in the chaos that can kind of come during the season. And I really just hope you're finding time for yourself as well. Whether you're a new mom like I am, or, you know, you've been a parent for 30 years, or you're solo and just hanging out, whatever you're doing, I hope you find some time for self-care and a place to optimize your health, even though you might be busy traveling, going back to back between Christmas dinners, shopping, all the things that kind of come with this season. So maybe this episode is joining you on a drive to a Christmas dinner, or on a drive to, you know, your cottage somewhere, or on a walk out in the snow. That's cool. And I'm glad I'm here with you and we can do this together. So enjoy this episode. I will catch you in the new year for some brand new content, which I'm so excited about. You can always find me on Instagram and my DMs. Please send me a message if you have any questions or love that you want to share. I get lots of questions in there of all sorts of things. Lots of people share their personal health stories with me, which is very interesting. So you are more than welcome to do that as well. Enjoy this episode. Before we dive in, a shout out to Bioptimizers, my sponsor of the year. Yeah, that's right. That's a big title. In my life, that's a big title. I love their magnesium, their digestive enzymes, and their probiotics. Those are the three staples that I lean on and have always used from them and will always continue to use. I think they're fabulous, especially their magnesium. I'm actually out of their magnesium and I need to order some. I'm using their magnesium powder right now, which is great, but I also like their capsules as well. Magnesium is involved in over 300 processes in the body. Most people are depleted in it, and I cannot stress enough how important it is that we get enough magnesium. So you can go to bioptimizers.com/biohackingbrittany to save 10% on all of their supplements. And I will link that in the show notes. Use my discount code biohackingbrittany to save. I strongly suggest you do so. My favorite supplement brand and my sponsor of the year. So thank you so much to Bioptimizers. Love you guys. Love everything that you're doing. And happy holidays, everyone. I will see you in the new year, and enjoy this time with your friends and family, and enjoy this podcast episode. Well, welcome to Biohacking with Brittany. I am so thankful that you are listening to today's episode. Oh, this is such a important episode to record, and will easily be one of the hardest episodes that I record. Thank you for listening, like I just said. And if there are a lot of pauses, or if I forget the words or the names of certain things, it's because I have baby brain 100%. And my memory recall with specific things isn't super great. But today's episode is my birth story. And I am recording this. My son, Callahan, is 7 weeks, just over 7 weeks old, which means that I gave birth just over 7 weeks ago. And I really wasn't sure if I was going to record this. I wasn't sure when I would put it out. However, it's probably the most requested episode I've ever had. the amount of women who have DM'd me and said, when is your birth episode coming out? I want to hear what happened. I want to hear about your birth story has been wild. I guess I just didn't even realize how many moms or new moms or pregnant women actually listen to my podcast and has kind of become my audience. I guess it makes sense, like with all of the talk I do about fertility and my preconception course that I have created that a bunch of you have enrolled in, which focuses on optimizing your health before you get pregnant. It kind of makes sense that that's kind of where I've gone, but it's been so requested and I've been delaying it because it's hard to talk about and it is very emotional. So I will 100% be crying during this episode. I don't think I've ever cried during an episode before, but I think that will change today. I also debated recording the video of this. And then I thought, I don't think this episode is the one to start recording videos for YouTube for. I think it'll just be distracting. And also I don't want to like take away from like what I'm saying and have to like factor in how I look and things like that. So I decided not to. This episode is, this is just for all the women out there who are pregnant for the first time and have birth coming up, or you have another birth coming up, or you yourself have been through birth trauma and it helps you to hear other people's stories. I think there's a lot to be said about that. So I actually, knowing that I was going to record this episode during the last few weeks of my pregnancy and a few days after birth, I actually have a note in my phone on all of the events that happened. And I'm so glad that I did that because there are many details and things that I probably would have forgotten about. So if you hear me pausing, I'm just kind of reading my notes to kind of see where I am. And I'm going to kind of go through it chronologically. I think that makes the most sense to kind of explain what happened, how it happened, why it happened, and my 2 cents on it now. I probably should do another episode, reflecting on my birth, next year, like a year later, because I bet you my feelings and my thoughts and my reasoning and everything will be much different than today. But lo and behold, here we are. Yeah. And I'm also going to do more solo episodes. I put a poll on my Instagram story and I think a combo of like interviews, one interview and one solo episode a week would be really nice. I have so much to talk about now in terms of like postpartum, mental health, body, weight, breastfeeding, all of the natural healthy toys and all of like, oh my gosh, there's just so much content. There's so many things that I've learned. So I would love to share that. Okay, so let's dive in. This episode will have a ton of resources. I will link everything in the show notes, everything from apps and books and things, all sorts of things that I used during the last few weeks of my pregnancy. So if you hear something that's, kind of stands out to you, you can go to the show notes on whatever platform you're listening on. And also on my website, every single podcast episode is there, biohackingbrittany.com. Every episode is there with the show notes since the beginning of time, since the beginning of this podcast a few years ago. Okay. Woo, this is like going to be really hard for me to talk about, but I think it's going to be very therapeutic. So, and I don't have too much time because my baby is sleeping and, we're all about efficiency now that we have a baby. So here we go. I want to take us back to a few weeks before my birth. I feel like I'm going to cry already. Okay. So if you are a listener of the show, you know that I got pregnant right away for the first time on the first try. And I did my preconception cleanse for 90 days, I had no issues there and had a relatively easy pregnancy. First trimester was hard, but all in all, like things have been pretty great. So 37 weeks come and 37 weeks and 3 days. And we have a midwife appointment. So I have now moved to Ontario, the east coast of Canada, and I have a wonderful midwife. Her name's Barb. I don't know if I should keep people's names hidden, but I'm not going to. So anyway, her name's Barb and she's wonderful. She is like a low key OG biohacker, like very similar values, if like very hippie, very natural, very like advocates for herself, smart about the healthcare system, and just like was my rock. And she became my midwife in January. And then we moved to the town that we're in now, Huntsville, in the beginning of May. So I saw her virtually, and then I started seeing her in person. So I have this appointment at 37 weeks and 3 days. And I go into this appointment and I'm thinking everything's great. And I lie down on the table and they feel the baby. And there's a student there who's helping, which is a whole nother story, which I don't know if I would ever use a student again. Anyway, so I lie down on the table and they're feeling my belly, because they have to kind of measure your belly to see that you're actually growing at the correct rate, check positioning, and that type of thing, because obviously we're getting close to my due date. And so she comes over. Prior to this, my checkups every 2 weeks, the student was feeling my belly. So the student was saying, oh yeah, like this is what you're growing. This is his heart rate. This is his position. And I was like, oh, okay, good. And so my midwife, Barb, would let the student measure. And I trusted everything that they would say. On this day, Barb decides to come and do it because I had a discussion with Barb during that consultation saying, I'm not super comfortable having a student involved with my birth. I would love if we could not have her. If it could just be you at my home birth that we're planning, like if it could just be Barb and my backup midwife, Dawn, who I had not met yet at the time. So it would just be the two midwives, my doula, Courtney, and my husband, Ryan, and me. And so I said, please, let's not use this student anymore. So during this consultation, the student is now no longer there. And Barb comes over and feels my stomach and feels my belly. And we discover that he is breech. And so So breech basically means that instead of the head being face down, the head being down in the pelvis where it should be, because the head comes out first, his bum was at the bottom and his head was at the top. So his head was in between my ribs. His bum was at the bottom and his feet were up by his face. So kind of like a pike position. If you picture, someone jumping off a diving board, that's what breech is. And that was the position that he was in. It's called Frank position. And so she's feeling between my ribs and she says, I think this is his head. It's hard. It's large. And prior to that, when this student was feeling my stomach, she was like, she thought it was the bum. But then Barb says, usually the biggest thing that you feel and the hardest thing that you feel is the head. So then I'm thinking, I don't know anything about breech at all. At all. Like at all. What do we do? Kind of type of idea. So she says, we need to double check this. Can we do a quick ultrasound at the local hospital here in Bracebridge, this afternoon? I can do a little check one. So we had to wait around and we go and we check and we do this ultrasound with her. It's like a 5-second ultrasound. And lo and behold, he is breech, and she was correct. We then have to go and do a full ultrasound in Huntsville, which is the town that I'm in, where they check everything. So they check the full positioning. They measure the arms, the head, the legs, all of these things. They look at his heart rate and all that type of stuff. So then we went and did that. And that was interesting because little did I know that was my first incidence of me being against the medical system here. Anyway, so I go and I get this full ultrasound done. This is like the next day. Okay. So we're still at 37 weeks, 4 days here. And this tech is like doing these measurements and stuff. And the tech says to me, and I actually posted this on my Instagram stories. I was so angry. The tech says to me, I'm just going to like walk you upstairs for more testing. And I look at her, I'm like, what do you mean more testing? And she's like, oh, we need to do a stress test. And I was like, what is the stress test? Like, what are they testing for upstairs that you can't test for? And she actually couldn't answer me. So I said, you're doing this ultrasound. You're not telling me something. Now you're trying to walk me upstairs for more testing that you can't explain to me that you think is needed. And I was like, I don't know about this. She also called my baby lazy because, they have these certain things that they have to do during this ultrasound, and he wasn't doing any large movements. So she said, oh, he's just being lazy. And that really pissed me off. So I declined it. And I said, no, I'm not going upstairs for more testing. I'm not doing more ultrasounds. I am limiting, the testing that I'm doing. You're creating more stress for me. And I just don't think it's necessary. And so we didn't. And we walked out of the hospital. And that was that. And I called my midwife, Barb, and she's like, yeah, I don't know why they think that you need more testing. She's like, your baby's obviously healthy. He wasn't moving at the time. Who knows, maybe why? Maybe he was sleeping. Maybe he, in the breech position, didn't have as much movement, didn't have as much space, whatever it might be. So it's funny because looking back at that moment, I was really pissed off and stressed about that moment. But little did I know how much was coming. That incident in the grand scheme of everything that happened is nothing. So now we've confirmed that he's breech. And for those who don't know, most of the time you find out a baby's breech really early on. You find out about 25 weeks, maybe 30 weeks. The odds of a baby being breached at 37, 38 weeks is 3% of pregnancies. Okay. 3%. There is nothing that I quote unquote did or that caused it to be like that. There's nothing that, right? It's more common apparently in first pregnancies because your ribs don't open as much and baby can get stuck, that type of thing. That's kind of all that I heard. And because every time that I got felt and checked, it was by that student midwife, we assumed that was the bum. He's actually been breached for quite a while. And because he's my first pregnancy, how would I know? Right? I never thought, oh, this big round thing by my ribs, that could be his head. I never thought that. I've never been pregnant before. How would I know that? Oh, okay, that's actually probably his head, not his bum. It wouldn't be that hard. It wouldn't be that big. These things, I just simply don't have the experience to know that type of thing. And so it was honestly pretty devastating. It was devastating because I don't know. I feel like I have so much healing to do. Anyway, I worked so hard to have such a healthy pregnancy. And I did have such a healthy pregnancy. To then have something like this happen that is so out of my control, it was very, very mentally difficult. Very, very mentally difficult to understand, to make sense of, to then think, okay, now what? Now things have changed. Where do we go from here? So of course, the logical thing or whatever, the biohacker thing to do is research everything that you can do to flip this baby. How do we turn him? How do we get him to be head down? The holidays are upon us, and you know what that means. It's a crazy stressful time of year for all of us. From shopping to hosting family and attending endless parties, the pressure can really start to rise. That's why I want to tell you about Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers. This is my absolute favorite magnesium product that I've been taking for over 2 years. It has all 7 forms of magnesium in it, making it a full spectrum magnesium supplement. Magnesium is essential for managing stress and maintaining a calm, balanced mood. However, most people are actually deficient, which can lead to a very poor stress response, fatigue, and even poor sleep quality. Magnesium Breakthrough helps balance your levels so you can get a better handle on the holiday madness. Their comprehensive formula supports everything from relaxation to energy production, so you can power through the season without burning out. Wouldn't that be nice? So don't let stress and burnout really ruin your holidays this year. Get Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers and give your body the magnesium that it actually craves. It's the perfect gift for yourself or a loved one this holiday season. I have the capsule forms. I also have the powders that I love, and I take it every single day, and all of my family members do as well. For an exclusive offer, go to biooptimizers.com/biohackingbrittany and use my promo code biohackingbrittany during checkout to save 10%. And if you subscribe, not only will you get amazing discounts and free gifts, you will also make sure your monthly supply is guaranteed. Like I said, this is my absolute favorite magnesium, and I highly recommend it to everybody. And I started doing all of that. And so one of the things that I did a few days later was a ECV. Now, what does that stand for? Oh my gosh. Sorry, guys. I'll have to look it up. But essentially, I'll just explain it to you. So an ECV is where people, it's either a doctor or midwife, one or two people will put their hands on your stomach on the outside and physically try to move and turn the baby. So there's risks involved with this. So some of the risks are that it can cause issues with your placenta. It can rupture your waters early. You can go into labor. And if that happens, it would be an automatic C-section right there and then, because the baby's obviously not in the right position. So I knew that. I knew that this was a risk, and I was willing to take that risk. So we drive down to the hospital in Aurelia. It's an hour south. And I do this ECV. I have my two midwives do it. I have my two midwives, Barb and Dawn, do it. And Ryan's there. He's holding my hand. You're not drugged. You're completely awake. You don't get shit all for it. Okay. And they're physically trying to manipulate his body over my stomach with their hands and move him. And he would not move. So it was unsuccessful. Was it painful? Yeah, it was painful. It was uncomfortable. But I don't know. I don't know if I have a high tolerance for pain, or if it was the fear of any alternatives was so significant at the time that it didn't matter if it hurt. It's probably the latter. So if you're thinking about doing an ECV and you're hearing this, my experience was pretty good, to be honest. It was unsuccessful, but it was pretty good. It was fine, I guess. And then after my midwives tried to do it, and I'm laughing because I just remembered this doctor comes in, this OB, and she tries to do it for 5 seconds. Okay. The midwives tried for like 2 hours. This doctor comes in, tries for 5 seconds, gives up, and then starts talking to me about doing a C-section and all of these things. I was not having the conversation, and I did not like her. And I was like, man, if that woman is my OB, I am not going to be happy. Turns out she wasn't. So it was good. But I was pretty blunt to her after having my body manipulated for 2 hours, her try for 5 seconds, her try to convince me to plan a C-section. And I just told her, like, that's not happening, and I just basically told her to go away. So that was at 38 weeks. Okay. So that was a few days after I found out. That same day or later the next day, my baby dropped low into my pelvis. So this kind of happens when your body's starting to get it ready for birth. So it happened around 38 weeks. And I could just feel his whole body drop low, which I didn't fully understand at the time, but looking back, wasn't really helping my situation, because that means that his bum dropped further into my pelvis, right? So think about trying to flip him when he's now even more stuck lower down like that. So let me talk to you about all of the things that I did to try to flip this baby. Holy smokes. First of all, spinningbabies.com. It gives you a bunch of exercises and stretches, a lot of inversions, a lot of different things that you can do to flip your baby. A lot of people have had success with spinning babies. However, most people who have had success with spinning babies are not 38 weeks pregnant. They're 30 weeks, they're 32 weeks, they're 20 weeks, whatever, much earlier in the pregnancy, when the baby is smaller and there's more space in the uterus to flip. There's more amniotic fluid and it's just easier. So I was doing those stretches. I then started seeing a chiropractor and we were doing this is what I'm talking about, baby brain. I think it's called the Webster. Is it the Webster method? Something like that. Starts with a W. Anyway, started doing chiropractic care twice a week. And I found a chiropractor who specializes in pregnancy and postpartum and doing this specific method that helps to spin and flip babies. I went to an osteopath. She fit me into her lunch schedules. I was seeing her once a week, twice a week, working on just different layers of my body, even more like the spiritual side as well, trying to flip him. So I was doing chiro, osteo. She also put me onto homeopathy. And I am not somebody who's done a lot of homeopathy remedies, homeopathic anything. But the homeopathy she put me on is called Pulstivia. I think I'm saying that correctly. Pulstivia. Didn't do anything. I took it every day. Didn't do anything. I was doing pelvic stretches. I was using the birth ball. I was exercising. And a big thing that I did was actually started meditating. And I use this app and I'll link it in the show notes. And I recommend it to every single woman who's pregnant or postpartum. It is called the Gentle Birth app. And they had a meditation in here that was all about hypnobirthing and about breech. And I did this meditation, I think it was 20 minutes, once or twice a day for, I don't even know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks until he was born. I would sit outside and meditate. This is the most meditation I've done in my entire life. I would picture him flipping, moving, doing all of the things. And in conjunction to that, I started doing moxibustion. Moxibustion is basically when you have a warm, how do I describe it? It kind of looks like a cigar. I think it's a part of Ayurvedic medicine, if I'm correct, but it kind of looks like a cigar, but it's like a rolled up herb. And there are certain points on the body that are great that are known to kind of flip or move babies in the womb. And it's actually the outside of the pinky toes. So I bought moxibustion sticks from an acupuncturist and I would sit outside, one on each foot, and do this meditation twice a day for many, many days in a row. So I was doing that and that app was phenomenal. And I was meditating on the baby and all sorts of things like that. What I do want to talk about is, I'm just going to find it here. Okay. I want to read this to you. So, you know me, I'm doing all my research and whatever. And how did I get to that point of that app and that moxibustion? I knew about moxibustion because I did acupuncture during my pregnancy and my acupuncturist told me about it. So I already knew about that. And I used it many, many years ago for something else. So I'm researching breech baby meditations and I come across this blog post and let me read this to you just like briefly. So the title is Turning Your Breech Baby with Hypnobirthing, because I was trying to do hypnobirthing, right? And I'm reading this and some of it really, really hit home. So let me just read this to you. Hold on. Okay. They have a paragraph that's titled A Life Out of Balance, How Hypnosis May Help. So this is what it says. It says, anecdotally, it's been my experience that overextended, stressful, fearful parents who move house or renovate their home during pregnancy have very demanding jobs and don't seem to have much time for their pregnancy tend to have more breech presentations. You know who you are. You live in your head most of the time. The idea that a life out of balance contributes to a baby staying breech is also found in various cultural traditions. It's almost as if baby is calling your attention to your pregnancy, and without a doubt, you have no choice but to put some focus on what's happening with the prospect of potential surgery, especially during a pandemic. This was written, during the COVID. And then it goes on to say, talking about hypnobirthing, and then just like using this, breech meditation on this app, which is what I was telling you about. But I just thought that was so interesting. That's just a snippet from it. There's more. I just thought that was so interesting because I moved during my pregnancy across the country, which wasn't great. And I definitely don't think I'm one of those people who was not connected to my baby at all. But I just read that and I was like, I just worked so much during my pregnancy that I was like, oh man, like I wonder if, I don't know, I was doing too much during pregnancy and that caused this. We'll never know, right? Like you can never ever relate those two things, but it was just kind of hit home when I actually did read that. So those are kind of all of the things that I tried. None of it was successful. So yeah, this is when things got really hard. I started working like half days and I felt helpless and overwhelmed and scared and fearful of what could potentially happen. So fast forward to 39 weeks, 3 days. So let's look at how long that is after. Okay. So that's 2 weeks. That's 2 weeks to the date. Okay. So 39 weeks, 3 days. I am coming up close to my due date and baby has not flipped. And I have a midwife appointment. So we drive down to Bracebridge, half an hour from our place. And instead of meeting with Barb, we meet with Dawn. Dawn is my backup midwife. And Dawn sits us down and says, Barb, your midwife, has taken a sudden leave of absence. And I stared at her and I was like, what do you mean? My due date is literally in 4 days. Barb and I have the most similar health values. She has been my midwife since January. I have a breech baby for my first pregnancy. We were planning a home birth. I don't know what's going to happen, where we're going to go, what we're going to do. We need to talk about my options. And you're telling me that the one person that I had to rely on, who I could trust, is no longer here. And I don't even have words for this to explain how I felt. I felt like devastated. Like, I don't even know. Like now I'm sitting down with Dawn, who I met once during my ECV. And now she's my main healthcare provider for this pregnancy, for this birth. Someone I don't know. I went the midwife route for a reason, to be able to build a relationship with somebody so that they could be there and support me through birth. And she took a sudden leave of absence for an emergency. I understand that things happen. I understand that, of course, like there's a time and place and, sometimes you can't show up, but holy shit, did that suck. So things took an even worse turn and we're going quite south quite fast. So now I have Dawn. Dawn is not as great as Barb. Barb has 25 years of experience, has done over 1,000 births, has 4 children, and over half of the births have been at home. Dawn, this is kind of her second career. She's been a midwife for maybe 7 years. Very different experience. And I have a new backup, which is Jocelyn. Toothpaste. We all need it and use it daily. But have you ever read the ingredients of your toothpaste or noticed the FDA poison warning on there? If not, keep on listening for some surprising information that your dentist might not be sharing with you. Fluoride has long been a common ingredient in many commercial toothpastes, hailed for its ability to prevent cavities. However, recent studies have raised concerns about the potential health risks associated with fluoride exposure. These risks include thyroid dysfunction, dental fluorosis, skeletal fluorosis, and potential neurotoxicity. Given these concerns, Wellness offers a safer alternative that doesn't compromise our health, yet remains effective. Why choose Wellness toothpaste? It is founded by Wellness Mama Katie Wells, and Wellness is dedicated to natural health and uses hydroxyapatite instead of fluoride, a game changer in oral care. Here's why it is a better choice. It's fluoride free, eliminating all the health risks that I just talked about. The natural hydroxyapatite formula strengthens enamel and whitens your teeth. Plus, it's crafted from natural ingredients, gentle on gums, and eco-friendly. I love it. I use it all the time. I love the taste of it. And I don't think I will switch to anything else. So make the switch for yourself today to Wellness Toothpaste. Visit wellness.com and use code biohackingbrittany for 12% off your order. That's wellness spelled WELLNESSE.com. Safeguard your health with wellness because your smile deserves the best. So I'm sitting there and I'm just listening to her talk to me about things. And we start talking about my options. So now I have to make these serious life decisions. And the person that I could count on to guide me, who I trusted, is now gone. So it's just me. I kid you not, it's just me. Why is it just me? Because Ryan will do whatever Ryan will agree with whatever I say, mostly, and he will support whatever decisions I make for my body, which he should. Dawn has 7 years of experience. What does that even mean? That's like nothing in the terms of this. Like, it's something, but it's not great. And also our values are very different. Like, the amount of phone calls that I had with Dawn from that moment until the birth of her explaining the pros and cons of certain things. And have you thought about this risk? And what if this happens? And, I don't know, very much painting the picture in the way that she wants the birth to go versus Barb, who would say, okay, here are your options A and B. Let's talk about this. Yeah. Like, knowing your values, you should probably do this. Like, it was just easier. Whereas Dawn was just not great in that sense. And I was really blunt with her too. Like, I was really blunt about how upset I was and how devastated I was to lose Barb 4 days before my due date. I want to read to you what I wrote at this time, because I think it really reflects how I felt. Now it's so different, right? Like, I have a healthy baby. It's easy to sugarcoat it, but I want to be real with you. And I want you to hear. Whew. All right. I want you to hear this. So I wrote this in the What to Expect app, which is an app that I've been using for my entire pregnancy. And I've been writing about, I've been posting, it's actually a pretty good app. It's got a great online community, and, I've been connecting with all the July 2024 mamas around the world and all these things. So I decided I'm going to explain to people my options, and I want to hear what everybody says. And I'm reading this to you, and then I'll kind of elaborate on all of the options that I had for birth. So here we go. I wrote this in, before Callahan was born. Hi, everyone. I'm in between a rock and a hard place and will love your support and opinions. I'm a first-time mom, 39 and 3 weeks, and have a frank breech baby boy. I've had a very healthy pregnancy and fertility journey. I'm very into holistic health, doing things naturally and biohacking. We found out he is breech at 38 weeks. I've been doing everything to flip him: chiro, osteopath, moxibustion, spinning babies, meditating, stretching, homeopathy, etc. We also tried an ECV and it was unsuccessful. I found out today that my midwife, who has very similar values to me, has taken a leave of absence, and now I'm stuck with my backup and a new backup. The backup is mediocre and not nearly as aligned with my health values or as experienced. For context, I'm in Canada, so this is covered by health insurance. We were originally planning a home birth until we found out he was breech, and the midwives here cannot support breech home births. My options now are to do a spontaneous, gentle C-section once I go into labor, planned C-section, or travel 4 hours away to a hospital that supports breech vaginal births with their OBs and midwives. At first, I was thinking I would do a spontaneous, gentle C-section as my original midwife recommended. This is on baby's timing and gives him to the last minute to flip. But after my meeting with my new midwife today, my local hospital is not happy about this and will be much less lenient on some of the things I want to do. In brackets, delayed cord clamping, etc. My local hospital is not trained for breech at all. My new midwife is going to try to advocate for me, but she's not nearly as experienced or strong-willed as my old midwife. We're setting up a call in the next 2 days with a surgeon who will likely push a planned C-section so that I can get more on my asking list. However, now that I lost my amazing midwife, I'm considering traveling to the hospital that's 4 hours away and staying in a hotel in that city and doing a vaginal breech birth. I originally didn't want to do this because I didn't want to lose my care team, but I lost the one person I was counting on anyways. This would mean potentially staying in a hotel for up to 2 weeks and then traveling back with a newborn. Money isn't too much of a concern with this, although we wouldn't be staying in a Fairmont or anything for that long. I'm really trying to weigh the pros and cons of my options here. I feel like I did everything right, and now I'm having to choose between two crappy options. I'm really hoping for a miracle and that this baby flips sometime soon. I know he can still flip during labor. If you have any experience with this type of dilemma or birth, please let me know. Please let me know what you think. Thank you. Okay, so that's what I wrote. So essentially, you kind of heard those options there. My local hospital here in Huntsville is a tiny hospital. It is a level 1 hospital. There are no OBs. There are no specialized surgeons. There are only general surgeons. So it would have to be a planned C-section if I was going to have birth here in my town. That's one option. Okay. Then I could do a planned C-section an hour away in Aurelia, which is south, and do it with an OB. They have a NICU. It is a level 2 hospital, and they have, multiple OBs who are experienced in this and could do more of my birth plan. My third option would be I guess there's 4 options. My third option would be to travel to Ottawa, which is about 5 hours away, and try to get one of the Ottawa midwives to do a vaginal breech birth in the Ottawa hospital with me. My fourth option is to do an unplanned C-section, spontaneous C-section, or emergency C-section, whatever you want to call it, and do this I would soon find out, do this in the Aurelia hospital. So this is why this was so stressful, is because I planned this home birth. I bought everything for it, mentally prepared for it. I was ready to do it. I was ready to advocate. I was ready. You know what I mean? I was so prepared. And then to find out that midwives don't support C-section, or not C-section, midwives don't support breech births at home was devastating. And then even to find out that the hospital that was, an hour away, they do support vaginal breech births, but you have to hit these certain markers. And if you don't, then they push you into a C-section. And the markers that they provide you that you have to, it's kind of like these requirements that you have to hit, are very similar to what you would expect for a second-time mom, not a first-time mom. First-time moms usually labor is longer, contractions are more spread out, that type of thing. And so it would be hard for me to kind of hit that checklist. So you can even just hearing these options now, imagine me being 39 and a half weeks pregnant. I've just lost my midwife. I am exhausted, hormonal, pregnant for the first time, trying to navigate these options and not feel overwhelmed. It was a disaster. It was an absolute disaster. It was one of, and I think this is why I have so much healing to do from it. It was one of the hardest things I've ever been through, is making this decision, right? Making this decision. And I spoke to experts online on my Instagram account. There's a couple of them I want to bring on my podcast. I reached out to doctors who I knew and I said, hey, what do you think I should do? I'm not in a community that really supports me. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to handle this. I don't have a midwife who can come and help me. And am I just going to deliver this baby by myself in my house with my husband? No, I'm not experienced enough. I don't feel confident in doing that. And it was honestly, I was so sad. I can't even explain it to you guys. I was so sad. I think the hardest part is I did so much to have everything go well. And then to learn that he was breech and to lose my midwife within 2 weeks or 3 weeks of my due date. both things that were like completely out of my control. I just like, I don't even know. I was lost. I had no one to turn to. No one. Obviously, I call my mom and stuff like that, and she has her opinions and family has their opinions. But the thing with birth is at the end of the day, you're the one who has to go through it. It's your body, and whatever decisions that you make, you deal with the consequences. No one else does. Nobody else does, right? Like, it felt like this massive weight of, you have this living being inside of you. Time is ticking. You have to make a decision of how you're going to give birth. Whatever happens during that birth and to that baby, that's on you. And I just remember sitting at my kitchen counter, just being like, I thought I was mentally strong. I don't know if I am. And it was rough, guys. Like it's going to take me a long time to heal from that. Honestly, I was just like so disappointed because I also felt like I just wanted to give him the best start in life. And now, how would I be able to do that? Like, how can I give him the healthiest start in life if the odds of me being able to do a vaginal breech birth are extremely low? The odds of him flipping are extremely low. I just felt like I almost like failed him in a sense. And it's like something that I'm trying to work through. A couple days later, we go to Huntsville Hospital and we meet with the surgeon, this general surgeon. Her name's Jen McMullen or something like that. And we're talking about my options. And she says that the only option is to do a planned C-section. She wanted to book me in for Monday, 8 a.m., like it was a meeting. She said that the Huntsville Hospital is very uncomfortable with breech. And it was scary to the surgeons and the nurses that there was a breach in the community. That's how they worded it to me. This community that I have just moved to, like I was a problem, like they had to get rid of it or get rid of me. So we meet with this surgeon. She's telling me these things. This hospital has a high C-section rate. That's a whole nother discussion, 39%, which is very common in North America now, sadly. And they were just not comfortable. And I said, okay, so you want to schedule this C-section for Monday at 8 a.m. What happens if I go into labor this weekend? And she's like, oh, you would have to go down to Aurelia, an hour from my house, because we're not comfortable with emergency C-sections. We're not comfortable doing that knowing he's breech. So that felt great. Because at the time, obviously, you don't know when you're going to go into labor. You don't know if it's tonight or tomorrow or in an hour. You have no idea. So I was like, great. So we plan this certain thing. We do it how you want to do it. And if it doesn't happen exactly at that time at 8 a.m. on Monday, I'm not supported. Great. Thank you so much. So I said to Ryan and I said to Dawn, I said, Huntsville is not happening. I'm not doing it here. This is a disaster. And also, why, if I am going to do a C-section, why on earth would I have a general surgeon do it? Please, if you are listening to this and you're planning a C-section or whatever, please use an OB if you can. Use a specialized doctor who is in and out of this day in and day out and is just in this field, because it makes such a difference. So I decided that traveling to Ottawa, trying to get a new midwife in this new hospital didn't make sense. I ruled that option out because I didn't want to travel 5 hours. I didn't want to go and wait in a hotel and then wait for me to go into labor and then go to the hospital there and then travel back for 5 hours with a newborn. That seemed like way too stressful, way too much. Also a new midwife, again, who I didn't know. And the odds of a vaginal breech being successful were not very high. And so what if I did all that work and all that stress, and then we ended up doing a C-section there anyway? So for me, that option I took off the table. It was too much. I took off Huntsville off the table because, you just heard they really gave zero fucks about me at all. It was just another surgery. And so I was like, I'm not doing this. So it essentially left Aurelia, and Aurelia, they wanted to plan the C-section. They have OBs there. They have a NICU, level 2 hospital, all of those things. I wasn't a super great candidate for trying the vaginal breech birth there because I'm a first time mom. And also just the risk of his head getting caught, which I'm going to get into now, was significant. So after we're starting to rule out these options here. And then we do another 39 weeks and 5 days, we do another ultrasound. So he has a very large head. Still has a very large head, short legs, which is BS because my whole family's tall anyway, short legs. And apparently, according to this tech, my placenta was showing signs of maturing, which is calcification, and that we should act sooner. So when this happens, the placenta kind of has little white spots on it, which is calcifying. And it is basically like low key kind of starting to dry up a bit. And so, we want to get this baby out sooner than later. What is very interesting is that when I gave birth, I had my placenta encapsulated. I gave it to a local doula, and she told me there were 0 signs of calcification on it. 0. There were no white spots. There was nothing wrong with it at all. So if you hear that in an ultrasound, please know that that is not set in stone. That is not something that you actually really need to worry about, especially I wasn't even 40 weeks yet. Maybe if you're 41 and a half weeks, maybe if you're 42 weeks, you're kind of getting there. Sure. But like the fact that I don't know if this tech lied or didn't know how to read the ultrasound, but man, I was frustrated when she told me that because I told her and she's like, no, your placenta was totally fine. So whenever you get these ultrasounds done, like make sure you take it with a grain of salt. Looking back, I don't know why I got this ultrasound done. I think I was beaten down. I think I wanted to check that he was still going to be okay. And, I'm going to get to my advice at the end of this episode because I have quite a bit of it, but you really have to think that like every decision that you make during pregnancy can have a positive and a negative outcome. Every time you do a test, every time you do an ultrasound, there can be ripple effects from that. And that's what happened with this, right? So they said, oh, your baby has a really large head. Oh, your placenta is maturing. We need to act faster. Let's plan a C-section. And that was what my midwife, Dawn, was saying to me. Okay. Like she was saying, like she was pushing the planned C-section, Huntsville, planned C-section, Aurelia, planned C-section. And I was like, guys, get out of my face. No, it's not happening. I don't want to do it like that. And I was so exhausted. Even thinking about this now, I'm exhausted. So anyway, so that's the ultrasound that we did at 39 weeks and 5 days. And mind you, he does have a big head and he did have a big head. So that part was actually accurate. So 39 weeks, 6 days come and I'm getting daily Braxton Hicks. Had Braxton Hicks, last couple of weeks of my pregnancy-ish, on and off. That weekend started becoming daily. That was a Saturday. Then we get to 40 weeks and 2 days. So I'm now past my due date. And I met Jocelyn, which was nice. We did a checkup, that type of thing. And at this point, they are still pushing a planned C-section on me. And I said no. And I decided by my due date, that I want to do a unplanned spontaneous C-section in Aurelia. Now, let me explain to you why. Couple of reasons. And this is what Barb, my original midwife, had said to me and had like low-key recommended. I was hoping he would flip last minute. Okay. That was a big thing. I was praying for a miracle. More than that, though, was I wanted it to be on his time. I wanted to wait until I went into labor and then I would do the C-section, because that said to me, he is ready. He's ready to come into this world. He's ready to be earthside. The amount of pushback I got from this was outrageous. The surgeons, the hospitals, the midwives, every single person pushed back on it. Every single person. And I told them, I said, I feel like I have lost everything that I wanted for this birth. I have lost because of where I live, because of my options, because of breech, because of losing my midwife. I have lost everything. The last thing that I am holding on to is doing this on his time so that it can feel organic, so that I can feel connected to him, like I respect him and I trust him over you. Nobody liked that. Nobody liked that. Nobody saw it like I saw it. And I felt so unsupported. I can't even tell you how unsupported I felt. It felt like they wanted to, like I said earlier, schedule me and get it done. And it didn't matter. And so I just advocated for myself again and again and again, to the midwives, to the surgeons, to the OBs, to the nurses, to my husband, to my mom, to everybody, again and again. And I said, this is what I think I should do. And I said, when I go into labor, we will drive to Aurelia, an hour away, and we will do the C-section. It will be on his time. He will be ready. The other benefit as well of waiting for this is that my body would actually get to experience labor, so that if I have another child, I actually have muscle memory and obviously mental memory of what that's like. Feeling contractions, having my water break, going through that, being able to really understand and be like, wow, okay, this is what birth, the beginning of birth at least, feels like. And so it's kind of what happened. We got to 40 weeks and 3 days, and I'm working on my laptop. And in the morning I had mucus, this mucus come out of me in the toilet. And I'm thinking, is this my mucus plug? Is that what that is? And so then I started getting some contractions in the afternoon. And I thought at first it was Braxton Hicks, but then they kind of weren't going away. And then I could kind of ignore them, in the beginning. I was ignoring them. I was like, oh, this is fine. I'm just going to work. I'm going to continue on. And then they kind of got more. And I called my midwife, called Dawn, and I said, hey, is this Braxton Hicks? Am I in labor? What's going on? And she's like, okay, take a bath, see how you feel. If they continue, you can, call me back. So I called her back, and around 7 p.m. that night, 7 p.m., my water broke. I'm at home. I go to the bathroom and I'm like, wow, this is a lot of liquid. So I'm having contractions, at the time they were very varied a lot. So 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Each contraction was maybe 30 seconds. It was all over the map, which is very what you kind of expect in the first phase. So we took our hospital bag that we had to pack, unfortunately, and we had everything ready. We went in the car and we went to the hospital, and we were there at 8 p.m. Now, the doctor, the OB that was on the call, Dr. Green, she started at 8 p.m. and she was on shift for 12 hours, 8 to 8. And when I was talking to Dawn, my midwife, and explaining hey, it might be tonight, she was like, wow, this is actually pretty good news, because the OB who's here is actually pretty progressive. So she's probably going to be able to get you some of the things on your birth plan that you were not able to get in other places. Now, maybe I can send the link to this. I have a birth plan. Okay. The birth plan that I used, I had a birth plan already created for home birth. It was from Mama Natural. I downloaded her birth plan and then I altered it to what I wanted. And then I created one. I had to create one for a hospital birth and a C-section birth and what I was going to do. And this was a big part of whenever I was talking to the midwives or the surgeon in Huntsville, was like going through this birth plan and asking for these certain things that I wanted. Now, let me try and I'm pulling it up so that I can actually read it all to you. Let's see. Okay. And there's a lot on here. Okay. But there were basically some things that I wanted to do that were controversial, that they were uncomfortable with, and I had to talk to them about. So things like skin to skin contact right away, vaginal swab or vaginal seeding, really, it's like called a gentle cesarean. Maybe I should actually do a whole podcast on it. I'll do that because this podcast episode is getting very long, and I'll go through everything of what a gentle C-section is, but you can look it up online. I essentially wanted to do a gentle C-section, a cesarean. And so some of these doctors were for it, some of them weren't, but thankfully the doctor that I had on call, Dr. Green, was open to some of these ideas, open to vaginal seeding, open to doing skin to skin contact right away. So we get to the hospital, we go into triage where I'm using my Gentle Birth app, which has a separate app actually that goes with it, that every time you have a contraction, it like breathes you through it and like gives you affirmations. So you click start and you're like breathing through this contraction with the app. It's playing out loud and I'm like getting in the zone, that type of thing. I'm in this triage room and there's another woman in there who's also in labor, who is like trying to get her new baby daddy to come and get her old baby daddy to pick up her new baby daddy to bring him. She's on the phone. She's super loud, obnoxious, two totally different vibes. And thankfully we got moved to a private room. And then Dawn saw that my waters broke and we were actually able to kind of expedite things to get the C-section going sooner rather than me being sent away and coming back later when, things were more progressed. So at this point, contractions were every 5 to 10 minutes. And yeah, we were like, okay, we're doing this. We are doing this C-section. This was nighttime. By the time we did the C-section, I had been in labor for 10 hours. And actually wasn't that bad. To be honest, it wasn't that bad. Again, I don't know if I have a high pain tolerance or if I had been beaten down so much mentally by the time birth came that I was like ready to get this going. I don't know, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. But mind you, I never got to the point of pushing or where the contractions were every few minutes. Like the closest they were every 5 minutes. And they, sometimes they were 8 out of 10, sometimes they were 3 out of 10 pain wise. So I meet with this doctor. We decide, all right, we're going to do this C-section. We're going to do this gentle C-section. And she tells me that instead of taking the baby out and putting him in a warmer to do the measurements, she can do skin to skin by lifting up the drape, putting him on my belly. The midwife grabs him from my belly and puts him on my face or neck or wherever my skin is because, obviously my belly's cut open and she can't pass him directly to me because everything has to be sanitary. There's rules about what she can touch with her gloves, all these types of things. And she's like, I've never done this before, but I can do this for you. And later on, I had a few of the nurses talk to me and one of the nurses I've been working for 33 years and I've never, ever seen that happen in a C-section before where they give the baby to the mom right away and put the baby on the skin right away. So during this prep, we're having these people come talk to me. I met with the anesthesiologist. I met with the nurse. I met with the surgeon. My 2 midwives were there. My doula, Courtney, was there, who was great. Thankfully, I had her during my whole pregnancy. And then I had Ryan. Ryan was allowed in. He was allowed in when they did the I didn't do an epidural. I just did, I'm forgetting the name of it. Whatever. They put the anesthesia in through my spine, and he was allowed in the OB in the surgical room with me during that time, which usually they don't allow. And that was really great as well. So he was scrubbed in. So we go into this OB room. It's 11:30 p.m., 11:45 p.m. on the Wednesday. The room is freezing cold. Okay. I'm not allowed to wear my contacts. I have to wear glasses. Ryan's there scrubbed in with me. I lay down on the OR table. After they drug me up, they put me on morphine, which is what I wanted. And, I'm on an IV drip, and they allowed Ryan to bring his phone in for music. Again, this is part of the gentle C-section. I do need to do a separate podcast on that, but they allowed music through the phone. So we play this Taylor Swift playlist, actually. It's called like the baby Taylor Swift playlist or something. Helps put babies to sleep. And so we played that, and it was very calming. And he had the phone by my head so that I could hear the music. And what I didn't know at the time was my new backup midwife, Jocelyn, had my phone and actually took photos of the entire event. So these photos, I cannot share them. Some of them are really graphic, so I can't really share them. But the photos of him coming out of me breech, I look at them and I cry because it was like the hardest thing. Oh, it was such a disaster. Anyway, so that's what happens when I look at those photos. So we go into this OR, and I'm drugged up. I'm lying down, and I look up at the lights above me, and I can see the reflection of the up on the other side of the drape. I can see my body being cut into. And I told them when I was lying on that table, I said, guys, I can see what you're doing through the reflection of the light. And there's nothing that they could do. What, are they going to move the lights? They can't do that. So, I couldn't see all of it, but like I could see the bright red blood. I could see the hole in my stomach. Like I could see the cut. I could see the thick layers of tissue. Like, yeah, I'm not someone who gets squirmish at blood, so I was fine. But man, if you're somebody who's uncomfortable, yikes. So they put the spinal in. There were no issues with that. Like I said, laid me down. Ryan was on my right arm. The other arm was on a table. So I was like pinned down, almost like in a T, like my arms to the sides. And then I had the drape. I was really nervous. I started crying. The anesthesia, I can't believe I wrote this. I'm reading this out loud. The anesthesiologist asked what's wrong. And I said, I feel disconnected from the birth. Oof, that hurts. Yeah. How can you feel connected to the birth when you can't even see what's going on? When your baby's being cut out of you, how can you feel connected? At least it was on his timing. So there was that sense of connection that I had. So I had this Taylor Swift app playing, Taylor Swift playlist playing. I will link it in the show notes for everybody. I still use it now. I actually use it all the time to put my baby to bed. And when he was born, for all the Swifties out there who know her music, the song that was playing was the acoustic version of State of Grace, which I love that song. And then right afterwards, the next song was Never Grow Up, which is her song about babies, actually. So it was really cute and really, really special. He came out. He started crying almost right away. They lifted him so I could see him above the drape, which was awesome. And then we did the delayed cord clamping for about a minute. After this, they passed him to me underneath the drape, and he was put on my face. I was bawling. Ryan was crying. The baby was crying. Everybody was crying. It was insanely overwhelming. I look at the photo of him on my face because I just like meeting my baby, realizing I'm a mom, realizing that he's out and that this birth is okay right now and he's alive and he's healthy, and being drugged up on morphine, but also being pinned down to the table that I can't really move. and he's on my face and neck and I can't put my arms around him, but he's wailing and crying and I just want to soothe him. And like, and he's bloody and he's like, there's gunk everywhere. And like, it was so overwhelming. Like, oh my goodness. And I was just trying to kind of take it in, and it was really hard. He was there for a while. He was crying. I wrote in my note here, I remember thinking I don't feel connected to baby like he wasn't mine. I don't know why I felt like that. I remember that feeling. I remember him being put on me and feeling like he wasn't mine. Like, who is this? Could be because it was a C-section and like there was that like disconnection there. I don't know why. Or because I'm a new mom and like maybe that's a very normal feeling. But I will say that feeling like went away very quickly. So he was born at 12:12 a.m. on July 11th. So he was born at 12:12 a.m., 8 pounds, 13 ounces. And he had a beautiful spiral, like white umbilical cord, which was actually really cool. So what ended up happening was while he was on me, on my face and on my neck, I started feeling really nauseous, which can happen from the spinal anesthesia. And so they actually had to take him off me. And I was like gagging into a bag that Ryan was holding. And I felt like I was going to vomit. Nothing came out. The anesthesiologist came over to my face and told me to breathe and slow down and calm down. Ryan did the same thing. Ryan was super helpful during that time. And the baby was with Dawn. And I just wanted water and wanted to sit up, but I couldn't. And during this time when I was really nauseous was when they were stitching me back up and stitching up my layers. So that was really hard. But like I was very, very, very sick. And I lost about 900 mils of blood. Usually you lose about 500 mils, but I probably lost more because I was in labor and then did the C-section. And so that's fine. Is what it is. And then they gave me some gravel to help with nausea, and then it got better. And then Ryan went with the nurse to do the first round of checks on him. His APGAR score was an 8, and then it was a 10, so he was fine. And then we rolled me onto a new bed, and they moved me into like this postpartum room almost. So it was like a middle room. So it wasn't like the room that I was originally in. It was like this other room that I went to where they had to monitor me and baby for about an hour. So Ryan was holding the baby Callahan. Ryan was holding him, and then I was getting checked. And so they did his weight measurements, they did his height and all that stuff. And so it was nice because they kind of like did it in front of me, and Ryan was on the couch. So what was interesting during this time was they had to monitor my vitals for the hour, and I was extremely cold. It was probably from the the OR room. So I was like 34 degrees. So that's Celsius. So let's see what 34 degrees is in Fahrenheit for all the Americans is 93. And typically I think you're usually about 97? 37. So then you're 98.6. So I was really, really cold. So they had to give me this like huge blanket to warm me up, this air blanket that like, has hot air in it. So I was in there for a while and they were warming me up, and I was shaking so badly. Holy smokes. From the burst, from the drugs, I was shaking probably for 2 hours, and it finally calmed down. My whole body was shaking. And then Dawn almost forgot to do the vaginal seeding, and I had to remind her when we were there. And so we did that earlier where I put the swab up my vagina. We took it out, and then in that room, we like put it on his mouth and like on him so that he would get the benefits of my microbiome on him. So I made sure that we did that, and she kind of forgot, which was just another part of it. So I got moved to my private room, and then we were trying to figure out breastfeeding with colostrum, which I will do a whole podcast episode on breastfeeding because that is a major thing you have to tackle. And it was hard. And I don't want to fully spend time on that right now. I had a catheter in during the surgery. And so basically what this is like a little tube that connects to a bag and lets like urine flow out of you automatically. So they kept that in for, I don't know how many hours, like, I don't know, 10 hours or something like that. And anyway, then they took it out. But that day when they took it out, I hadn't been able to pee. And then I started getting this pain, this like shooting, lighting pain in my vagina, in my pelvis. And I didn't know it had anything to do with that until I talked to the nurse about it, and it was getting worse and worse. And I started screaming and crying. And this was, like, hasn't even been a day since my birth. And I was like, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Like, I can't go to the bathroom. I'm having insane pain. So she's like, do you want to do a quick ultrasound on your bladder? I was like, yes, let's see what's going on. They do a quick ultrasound on my bladder. Looks like I have 1,200 mils sitting in my bladder that I can't get out. So they have to do a quick in and out catheter, another one. And then it drains my bladder. It turns out I had 1,500 mils of fluid sitting in there because I drink so much. And then the pain went away. And I slowly was able to start being able to pee again, within a few hours of that. And it was painful, but it got better and better. And actually, it took me a few weeks to recover from that catheter, both of those catheters going in and out for the pain to go away. So we ended up staying 2 nights in the hospital. The nurses took Callahan for a few hours both nights, which was great so we could sleep. It was hard for me to be away from him. I was definitely anxious. And then we went home. So what I want to say, now that you kind of have the gist of things, you have the timeline of events, a few things I want to say. One, if you are planning a birth, if you are giving birth soon, or even 9 months from now, I strongly suggest to have multiple birth plans. Okay. I had my birth plan set out for my home birth. I had it printed. It was ready to go. And I had to make a plan B for a C-section hospital birth. I printed it out, like everything that I could give to the surgeon and the nurses. So what are we doing about vitamin K? What are we doing about eye ointment? What, like a gentle C-section? What is that? I had to explain that to them. I want to do vaginal seeding. I want to do skin to skin contact right away. I want to do, I want music in the OR. I want my partner with me the whole time. Like all of these different things that are abnormal. Okay. I had to make that birth plan and I was not prepared for that. And so when I have another kid, I will have multiple birth plans ready to go, depending on the way that the cards end up falling. Okay. So please do that. Prepare for any option you don't know. The next thing that I'll say is that I have definitely got birth trauma from this. And what I've realized in these last few weeks is that it's not actually trauma from the C-section itself. It's trauma from the last few weeks of my pregnancy, because I felt like I quote unquote did everything right and everything still ended up going wrong, if you want to call it wrong. Okay. So I felt unsupported and alone, and like nobody understood my values, and that I lost my care team. And that was one of the hardest things I've ever been through, was making that decision of an unplanned C-section against what every single medical professional told me. That was, I don't know why I have trauma from that. I'm probably too close to birth right now to be able to reflect on it, to be honest. And it's easy now to sit here and say, I did the right thing. During those weeks, I had no idea what was going to happen. I didn't know if I was making the right decision. I didn't know if I was going to go into labor and it was going to be precipitous labor, which means it's very fast, which means, you give birth within an hour. There was a risk of that Because what if that happened? My labor was an hour, and then he started coming out of me and his head got stuck. And then that puts my life at risk and his life at risk. What if that happened? There were risks no matter what decision I made. There were risks. The risks of the planned C-section, doing it early, was, what if he's not fully developed? What if he needs a few extra days to be as healthy as he can be, But like, there was just all of these questions and pros and cons of every single decision. And my advice to people is that you really have to advocate for yourself in today's medical system. You have to advocate when no one else agrees with you. You have to stand up for yourself when you're standing alone. That is very, very difficult to do when you're being pressured to do something you don't want to do. I don't even know what else to say. Like, you care the most about your birth more than anybody else, more than any doctor, more than any surgeon, more than any midwife or doula or anybody. You care the most. So really think about that. Like, the surgeons will forget about you. Your midwife will forget about you. They will forget about this birth. They will. Okay. Don't think otherwise. Right. And so that's why, if you can't stand up for yourself, if you can't advocate for what you need and you want in your birthing process, you got to learn and you got to do it. Like, I feel like I was thrown into the deep end and it was sink or swim for me. And I had to swim, and I was swimming by myself. And that's what happens to a lot of women out there. And a lot of women actually get pressured and just conform to what they think medical professionals want them to do. And then they have worse birth trauma and issues that come from it. And then they have to heal from that. And what's wild is that my actual C-section in itself, knowing the circumstances, was actually beautiful. The fact that my OB that happened to be on call did something new in her career that she's never ever done before and honored my gentle C-section birth wishes, lifts up the drape, puts Callahan right onto my body and on my face, my neck. That would not have happened in Huntsville with these general surgeons. Okay. That would not have happened if we would have happened if we had planned a birth at Aurelia, because they wanted to plan it for the Friday and he came early Thursday morning at 12:12. Right. So it ended up actually working out so well for me that we waited until I went into labor. I was in labor for 10 hours. We made it to the hospital. Everything was fine. There was no emergency. The baby was fine. I was fine. I got a lot of my gentle C-section plan wishes, like I was just saying. So looking back, it was like my mom, my new mom, my women intuition was screaming at me saying, wait until you go into labor. That is how you're going to get the best case scenario out of this. And I am grateful to my old self for sticking up for myself and advocating for myself. I'm thankful for the support I received online from the people who I did talk to about this. And it's going to take me a long time to heal. I don't know what it is I need to heal. Maybe it's trust issues. I don't know what it is, but part of me also had this weird thought of, Barb stepping away, my original midwife, at the last minute. I almost had this thought of like, maybe she thought I could do it on my own. Do you know what I mean? Maybe she was like, it's time to like set Brittany free and let her fly by herself. She doesn't need me to advocate for her. I believe that she can do this. And she just kind of threw me to the wolves and was like, fight. That's what I felt like. Man, I was so beaten down. I was so tired. So I would say that you need to advocate for yourself. I've always said that about the medical system today, but this was unlike anything I've ever experienced in my entire life. yeah, there was so much. Like I didn't want to do the vaccines right away or like any of them. I didn't want to do the eye ointment. I even debated not doing any antibiotics in my IV drip. So I had those discussions with the surgeons and they fought back on all of that. I did actually decide to do the antibiotics because if the C-section gets infected, it can actually impact breastfeeding, the medication that you have to take. And I didn't want to impact breastfeeding. So that was what changed my mind on that. But man, there were so many decisions that I had to make. And so I really just want to encourage you to advocate for yourself. Listen to your woman's mother to be intuition. Do what's best for you and your baby, not what is best for the medical system. What's best for the medical system is like you booking your C-section at 8 a.m. and they being done in an hour, right? Of course, it's scheduled, it's controlled. Like they have enough staff, like what could go wrong? But is that what's best for you? Is that what's best for your baby? I don't know. It wasn't for me. You have to be able to advocate for yourself. You have to educate yourself so that when you go into these conversations with these medical professionals, you understand the lingo. You understand what they're saying. They're not explaining to you the placenta and what it does and how it, pumps blood into the baby for oxygen and all these things. You already know everything, right? I had one person actually ask me if I was a nurse because I knew so much information. Okay. That's the level that you need to be at, that I recommend to you if you are giving birth anytime soon. Know your shit, because if you can understand what's going on, you have a better leg to stand on when you're standing up for yourself and advocating for yourself and your health and your baby's health. So please do your education. There's so many books. Google everything. Listen to the podcasts. Do it all. That's what I did. Go down the rabbit holes because it's necessary. This was a long podcast episode. I hope that, I don't even know. I hope it gives you inspiration. I hope you learn from it. My boy now, Callahan, is strong and healthy. We just did his checkup, his 7-week checkup. He is in the 85th percentile for weight and height. He's strong. He can hold his neck up. He's extraordinarily healthy. It's crazy. Okay. So please know that there is another side to this. Like if you're about to give birth, you will get through it. Once you're on the other side, it is so much easier. Okay. You have your baby. You can do your thing. It is so much easier. I will do a whole episode on postpartum health as well. Okay. I don't think I can say any more. This is really hard for me to talk about. Thank you for listening. If you have feedback or you want to talk about your birth or you want to tell me what you think, message me on Instagram at biohackingbrittany. I have a lot of you in my DMs and I read all of them and I really appreciate it. I'm a little slow these days because, I have a baby and I'm on mat leave and, doing all the things with him, but I will see it and I will respond. So thank you for that. And I am going to be doing lots more solo episodes on breastfeeding, postpartum, weight, mental health. I'll do a gentle C-section one. Lots of that coming over the fall and winter as well. I hope you enjoyed this. Subscribe, please. We are now in the top 1% of podcasts around the world, which is crazy. Don't know how that happened. But anyway, I love this community, and follow me on Instagram at biohackingbrittany and TikTok at biohacking. And yeah, that's kind of what I do. Just, I'm a women's health advocate and biohacker and nutritionist, and I really appreciate you listening. And I will catch you soon for another episode. Thanks for listening to another episode of Biohacking with Brittany. If you're interested in finding the show notes or the sponsors for this episode, you can do so on my website, which is biohackingbrittany.com. Remember to follow me on Instagram, where I'm most active. My handle is at biohackingbrittany. And if you're interested in working together and you want to email me directly, you can do that. My email is info@biohackingbrittany.com. And I look forward to hearing from you and having you tune in next week.